I want you to just, imagine for a second that you're waiting for a phone call, but not just any phone call. Or I don't know, maybe someone you love deeply just had a brain biopsy.
Right, which is already an incredibly stressful baseline.
Exactly. And you are sitting at home waiting to find out exactly what kind of central nervous system tumor, a CNS tumor you're dealing with. And right now, in modern medicine, that wait, that agonizing, sleep-depriving, life-on-pause wait, it can take up to 2 full weeks.
It's a devastating kind of limbo, honestly. Because for those 14 days, you can't plan treatment.
You literally can't do anything.
Right. You can't process the reality. Your entire life is just, it's suspended in this terrifying holding pattern.
But what if that same, highly detailed, granular answer didn't take 2 weeks? What if a computer could give your doctor that exact same diagnosis in 12 minutes?
Which is just, it completely alters the landscape of patient care, not just emotionally for the family, but clinically for the entire oncology team.
And that profound shift is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking this really groundbreaking paper recently published in Nature Cancer.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal piece of work.
It really is. It details an artificial intelligence algorithm called Hetairos, a system that is fundamentally revolutionizing how we diagnose CNS tumors.
And what's truly fascinating here isn't just the sheer processing speed, right? This is a story about democratizing access to elite medical diagnostics globally.
Right, for everyone.
Exactly. We're going to look closely at the underlying biological mechanisms this AI is exploiting, the massive international data sets it was trained on, and perhaps most excitingly, what happened when this algorithm was put into a blinded head-to-head showdown against some of the top human doctors in the world.
I can't wait to get into that showdown. But to really appreciate how monumental this AI is, we first have to, understand the nightmare that doctors are currently navigating. Because CNS tumors are incredibly complex, right? We aren't just talking about one single disease here.
Oh, not at all. They encompass a massive range of neoplasms, and they're characterized by intense morphological and molecular heterogeneity.
Okay, unpack that a bit. Morphological and molecular heterogeneity.
Sure. So what that means is that 2 tumors might look almost identical under a standard microscope. So their physical structures, their morphology look the same, but they act entirely differently on a genetic and chemical level.
So they wear the same uniform but have totally different jobs.
Exactly. One might respond beautifully to a specific chemotherapy, while the other just aggressively resists it.
Which brings us to the current gold standard of diagnosis, the thing that actually takes those 2 agonizing weeks, DNA methylation profiling.
Right. Since the 2021 World Health Organization classification of CNS tumors, the ultimate gold standard has been this molecular testing, specifically looking at DNA methylation. The WHO now officially recognizes 108 distinct tumor subtypes based on this precise molecular profiling.
So mechanically, how does methylation profiling actually work? Because when I was reading the paper, it honestly sounded like science fiction.
It kind of is. So think of a cell's DNA as an incredibly dense instruction manual. Methylation looks at tiny chemical tags, specifically these things called methyl groups, that are physically attached to the DNA strands.
Okay, so little tags on the DNA.
Right, and these chemical tags act like tiny biological switches that turn certain genes on or off. By mapping the exact pattern of millions of these microscopic switches, scientists can establish a highly granular molecular taxonomy.
It's like a barcode.
Exactly like a barcode. It provides a perfect, highly specific molecular fingerprint of the tumor.
Okay, so if this gives us the perfect answer, why isn't every single patient getting this on day 1? Why the 2-week wait?
Because the real-world drawbacks are just massive.
Wow.
First, reading that molecular fingerprint requires an enormous financial investment. We're talking bespoke, multi-million-dollar laboratory equipment.
Right.
Yeah, and it requires highly specialized technicians, massive computational infrastructure. That makes it totally inaccessible to a substantial portion of the global population.
So if you aren't at a massive research hospital in a major city, you probably just don't have access to this.
Exactly. And second, it requires a relatively large amount of physical tumor tissue to run the test successfully.
Which, when we are talking about the brain, you don't always want to just go in and scoop out extra tissue.
Right, exactly. In many cases, neurosurgeons perform what's called a stereotactic biopsy. They drill a small hole and use a tiny, precise needle to grab just a minute fraction of tissue from deep within the brain.
And I'm guessing that's sometimes not enough.
Often, there just isn't enough cellular material on that tiny needle to successfully extract the DNA and run a methylation array. And finally, even if you do have the money, and the machine and the tissue, the chemical extraction and sequencing process just takes a long time. The typical turnaround is 12 to 14 days.
So we have this perfect test that is slow, insanely expensive, and demands a lot of brain tissue. Which brings us to the standard of care that most of the world actually uses as their front line, which is H&E histopathology.
Yes. H&E stands for hematoxylin and eosin. These are standard chemical stains used in pathology labs worldwide, and they have been for over a century.
The pink and purple ones, right?
Exactly. Hematoxylin stains the cell nuclei, a deep purple, and eosin stains the surrounding cytoplasm pink. It's cheap, the tissue slides are readily and globally available, and it's almost always the very first step in any diagnostic workflow.
But historically, humans just couldn't see the molecular data in these pink and purple slides. The way I was wrapping my head around this difference, I was thinking about it like this. Methylation profiling is like reading a tumor's private, locked diary where all its deepest genetic secrets are explicitly written down.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. And then H&E is just looking at the clothes the tumor is wearing from across the room. Historically, we thought you couldn't possibly know the diary's secrets just by looking at the outfit.
That is a perfect analogy. Histopathology is essential, but it simply hasn't been sufficient to definitively diagnose the full spectrum of those 108 molecularly defined CNS tumors. The human eye just cannot see a chemical methyl group on a glass slide.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap here just to make sure I'm tracking the sheer scale of this problem. So bullet point 1, we have brain tumors that are highly complex and molecularly diverse.
Right.
2, we have a gold standard methylation test that gives perfect answers but takes weeks, costs a fortune, and requires lots of physical tissue.
Exactly.
And 3, we have H&E slides that are fast and cheap, but they lack the molecular detail our biological eyes need. So if you're listening to this, I want you to ask yourself, think about a time you waited for vital health news. How much would your anxiety have dropped if a 2-week wait became a 12-minute wait? Imagine getting that highly specific molecular answer before you even leave the clinic waiting room.
It is a profound shift in the patient experience. And that brings us to the core of this paper, how the researchers actually managed to bridge that impossible gap.
Enter Hetairos.
Yes, Hetairos. It's named after the Greek word for companion, which is a very deliberate choice by the researchers. It's an artificial intelligence algorithm designed to achieve what was previously thought biologically impossible.
Which is producing those 102 specific methylation-based subtypes using only those basic, cheap pink and purple H&E slides.
Exactly.
Okay, here is where it gets really dense, but incredibly cool. How does it actually do that? When I was reading the paper, I actually had to create a little mental shortcut for myself to understand how the AI processes all this data without just, melting the computer.
I love mnemonics. What did you come up with?
I thought of it like brewing TEAT, tile, extract, aggregate. So let's start with the T for tile.
That's brilliant, actually. Let's break that down. So when a standard pathology slide is scanned into a computer at 20x magnification, the resolution is staggering. We are talking about 0.5 micrometers per pixel.
That's tiny.
Right. The resulting whole slide image contains billions of pixels. It is simply too massive for any AI to process all at once. So the very first step is tissue segmentation and tiling. The algorithm takes that massive digital landscape and chops it up into thousands of non-overlapping tiles that are exactly 256 by 256 pixels.
So it's kind of like taking a massive satellite map of a whole city and cutting it into tiny, manageable square photographs.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's tile. Now let's move to E for extract.
What's fascinating here is how the AI analyzes those tiny square tiles. It uses a foundational vision transformer model called ProvGigapath.
Wait, hold on a second. A vision transformer. I know ChatGPT is a transformer model for text, right? It predicts the next word based on context. Is this doing the same thing but for images?
You hit the nail on the head. ProvGigapath is a state-of-the-art model that was pre-trained on hundreds of thousands of diverse histopathology slides. Through that massive exposure, it has learned to recognize incredibly abstract, complex morphological patterns.
Like what kind of pattern?
Things like how cells cluster together, the subtle textures of the tissue, the geometric spacing of the nuclei. For every single 256-pixel tile, ProvGigapath extracts these key visual features and mathematically compresses them into a dense 1,536-dimensional feature vector.
Okay, I have to pause here. 1,536 dimensions. I mean, my brain operates in 3D. How is it physically possible to pull over 1,000 distinct data points of visual geometry out of one flat microscopic square of pink and purple tissue? What is it actually seeing?
Think of it like taking a high-definition photograph of a really dense forest. Instead of just describing the visible trees, the computer compresses the microscopic structural relationships of every single leaf, every branch, and every shadow into a massive mathematical barcode.
Okay, the barcode analogy helps.
Right, so we can't see the barcode as a picture anymore, but the AI can read its mathematical DNA perfectly. It captures nuance that the biological human eye is entirely blind to.
That is just wild. Okay, so that brings us to A for aggregate. We have thousands of tiles, and each one has been turned into a 1,536-dimensional barcode. How does it give us one single diagnosis from all that?
For that, Hetairos uses a modified Transwell model. This aggregator basically acts as the central brain. It takes all those thousands of barcodes from across the slide, and it also folds in two crucial pieces of clinical context: the patient's age and the exact anatomical location of the tumor in the brain.
Oh, because a tumor located in a 5-year-old's cerebellum has a completely different probability profile than a tumor in a 60-year-old's frontal lobe, even if the cells look kind of similar.
Precisely. The model fuses all this visual and clinical data together into one cohesive slide-level embedding. And from there, it outputs the probabilities for 102 distinct subtypes and 34 Bratter tumor superfamilies.
Okay, I am going to play devil's advocate here because AI is notoriously a black box. If I'm a neurosurgeon or a pathologist making life or death decisions, how on earth do I trust an algorithm if I can't see why it made its decision? I mean, I can't look at a 1,536-dimensional math equation and verify it.
This raises a critical point, and it's one the researchers knew would be a major hurdle for clinical adoption. Doctors won't blindly trust machine. So Hetairos solves this black box problem by generating what they call prediction maps.
How does that actually work in practice?
As the algorithm processes the image, it uses a 5x5 sliding window across the tiles. By analyzing these local subsets, it calculates exactly which specific microscopic tiles contributed the heaviest weight to its final prediction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it translates that math back into a visual heat map that overlays directly onto the original slide image.
So it literally highlights the image for the doctor.
Yes. It creates hot zones areas painted in bright red, highlighting the exact microscopic cellular regions that are most indicative of that specific tumor subtype. It doesn't just hand down a verdict, it actively guides the human pathologist's eyes to the evidence, proving its logic.
It's basically pointing to the tissue and saying, look right here at this specific clustering of cells. This is exactly why I think it's an ependymoma.
Exactly.
All right, so distilling this section down, we take a massive image and tile it into squares. That's T. We use a transformer to extract a 1,536-dimensional barcode from each square. That's E. And we aggregate it all with the patient's age and tumor location to get a diagnosis, which the AI then proves by highlighting the slide. That's our TEA.
Spot on.
So I have a question for you listening. If an algorithm can extract over 1,000 dimensions of data from a simple glass slide, what visual patterns are staring back at us through the microscope every single day that our human brains are just biologically incapable of processing?
It is deeply humbling to think about. But, as fascinating as the math is, building an AI in a lab is one thing. Proving it actually works on real patients across the world is another entirely.
Right, which brings us to the validation, the proof in the pathology, so to speak.
Yes. The researchers started with internal validation. They built and trained Hetairos using a massive data set from the University Hospital Heidelberg, or UKHD. We are talking about 6,115 slides from 4,961 patients.
That's a lot of data.
It is. And crucially, all of these cases already had the ultimate gold standard methylation data attached to them, so the researchers knew the true objective answers from the start.
And when they unleashed Hetairos on this data set, how did it actually perform?
When Hetairos made what it deemed a high-confidence prediction, which means its internal probability score was greater than 0.5, it was correct 87.8% of the time for the exact top one molecular subtype.
Wow.
Yeah, and these high-confidence predictions accounted for 70% of all the cases.
So nearly 88% accuracy on the exact molecular subtype, just by looking at the pink and purple outfit. But we see this all the time with AI, right? An algorithm that works brilliantly in one hospital often falls apart when you take it somewhere else.
Exactly. AI is notoriously prone to overfitting. It can accidentally memorize the specific artifacts of one hospital's glass slides, or the chemical variations in their stains, or even just the specific quirks of their digital scanner.
Right. So to prove true generalizability, they had to take Hetairos global.
And they went big. They tested Hetairos on 10 external cohorts. This included 5,498 slides from 11 different centers spread across 4 continents. We're talking hospitals in the UK, Germany, France, China, Brazil, Chile, and the USA.
Okay, that is a serious test.
And this is where we see the model's true robustness. In these completely unseen global environments, across entirely different demographics and laboratory processing protocols, the accuracy held steady. Among the high-confidence cases, the top one accuracy remained at 87%. It didn't drop.
That is the ultimate gold seal of approval. But, in reading the methodology, there was one observation that I found really brilliant: how the AI handled the long-tailed pattern of tumor epidemiology.
Yes, this is a massive concept in medical AI. In the real-world data, the distribution of tumor types looks like a long tail.
Yeah.
About 30% of all cases belong to very common superfamilies, like adult-type diffuse gliomas.
Right, things like glioblastomas, that's the thick part of the bell curve. The AI sees thousands of those, so it gets really good at them. But the long tail means there are many, many subtypes among the 102 that are incredibly rare, things like liponeurocytomas.
Exactly. And AI algorithms famously fail on edge cases where they lack training data. It's just like a self-driving car.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. A self-driving algorithm works flawlessly on a standard highway because it has seen millions of miles of highway. But if it encounters a person riding a unicycle through a flooded crosswalk, it completely panics and crashes because it has never seen that before.
It confidently makes the wrong decision. So how does Hetairos handle the medical equivalent of the unicycle?
This is where Hetairos shows an incredible form of algorithmic self-awareness. When Hetairos encounters a rare tumor, specifically ones where it had fewer than 20 occurrences in its entire training data, it naturally struggles to pinpoint the exact top one diagnosis.
Makes sense.
But instead of blindly guessing and projecting false authority, it recognizes its own uncertainty. It actively assigns its prediction a low confidence score.
So it explicitly knows what it doesn't know.
Yes. The overall top one accuracy drops for these rare cases, naturally. But here is the brilliant part. Even in these low-confidence, highly rare cases, its top three accuracy remains at an impressive 71.4%.
Wait, really? So even when the AI is confused by something incredibly rare, it takes a massive, overwhelming differential diagnosis list of 102 highly complex tumors and successfully narrows it down to a highly probable top three list over 70% of the time.
Exactly. It transforms an impossible diagnostic puzzle into a multiple-choice question with only 3 options. For a human pathologist, that is an incredible head start.
Just thinking about the practical application of that, let's do another quick recap. 1, tested on over 11,000 slides globally. 2, basically 88% accurate when confident. 3, it knows its own limits with rare tumors. So I ask you, the listener, in medicine, what's more valuable? A tool that projects 100% confidence even when it's wrong, or a tool that explicitly taps you on the shoulder and says, I'm highly confident about these 3 options, but you need to take a closer look?
I'd argue the self-aware tool is infinitely safer for patient care, which perfectly sets the stage for the final, ultimate test of this system.
Yes, the showdown. Humans versus AI in the clinic.
The researchers didn't just want to know if Hetairos was mathematically accurate in a vacuum, They needed to know how it actually compared to the standard human baseline. So they set up a blinded side-by-side evaluation. They used 210 specifically selected slides covering the full spectrum of tumors.
And they brought in 5 board-certified neuropathologists. These aren't medical students. These are elite experts in the field.
Right.
And they were asked to predict the molecular methylation subtype using only the H&E slides, exactly the same way Hetairos did.
And the results were stark. The human experts profoundly struggled with the extreme granularity of 102 subtypes based on morphology alone. Their average top one accuracy was just 0.30, ranging from 18% to 36% across the 5 doctors.
30%. But, to be fair, they weren't incompetent. They were just being asked to perform a biologically impossible task seeing chemistry with the naked eye. So how did the algorithm do on those exact same sides?
Hetairos crushed the benchmark with a top one accuracy of 0.68.
Wow.
Yeah, and more than double the human accuracy. And when looking at the top 3 accuracy, humans hit 0.50, while Hetairos reached 0.84.
The AI could literally see the invisible. So what does this actually look like when deployed in a hospital? The paper details a prospective clinical evaluation using routine diagnostic samples, right?
Yeah, 210 routine cases. If we look at a hospital's daily routine, normally a pathologist looks at the H&E slide first. About 30% of the time, the tumor is simply too morphologically ambiguous. The doctor is forced to order advanced molecular testing like methylation.
Which kicks off that agonizing 12 to 14-day waiting period we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive.
Exactly. But in this evaluation, by deploying Hetairos right at the H&E stage, the diagnostic turnaround time for these complex, ambiguous cases plummeted from 12 days down to just 12 minutes.
12 minutes instead of 2 weeks. That's life-changing. But there is another massive clinical breakthrough hidden in this data. Let's go back to those stereotactic biopsies we mentioned earlier.
The tiny needle biopsies.
Right. The cases where the neurosurgeon drills a hole, uses a needle, and the physical tissue sample is just too small to run the methylation test, or maybe the array fails and gives a low score.
Yes, those scenarios are traditionally a diagnostic dead end. Without enough tissue for molecular testing, patients often require a second, highly invasive, incredibly risky brain surgery just to get more tissue.
But the paper shows that in those exact cases of limited tissue or failed molecular tests, Hetairos stepped in, looked at the basic H&E slide, and provided an 88.9% accuracy rate against the final integrated diagnosis.
It's amazing.
It completely rescued the diagnosis without needing more tissue and without a second brain surgery.
It acts as an incredible, life-saving safety net for the clinic.
But I have to ask the inevitable question, the elephant in the room, whenever an algorithm more than doubles human accuracy. Are neuropathologists out of a job? Like, are we replacing doctors?
Not at all. And this circles all the way back to the name Hetairos, the companion. This is not designed as a replacement. It's designed as a highly scalable triage tool that augments human capability.
How does that play out globally, though?
Think about massive global health disparities. In low-resource settings clinics in developing nations that could absolutely never afford a multi-million-dollar methylation array, Hetairos empowers those doctors to get molecular-level insights from the standard, cheap microscopes they already possess.
It brings world-class, elite diagnostics to the developing world instantly.
Exactly. And for the rich, high-resource hospitals that already have the expensive machines.
Yeah, what about them?
It acts as a highly efficient, cost-saving filter. It allows them to confidently and rapidly diagnose the 70% of common tumors in minutes. That saves their incredibly expensive, time-consuming molecular tests for only the rarest, lowest confidence cases. The unicycles and the crosswalk, so to speak.
Oh, I see. It frees up laboratory resources, massively reduces healthcare costs, and most importantly, it gets patients out of that agonizing limbo and into targeted treatment days or weeks faster. Let's just wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this for a final recap. 1, we have an AI that doubled human accuracy on standard slides. 2, turnaround time dropped from 12 days to 12 minutes. And 3, it actively rescues diagnoses when physical brain tissue is too scarce for standard tests. So I ask you, if you were the patient lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for answers, would you want your doctor relying solely on their own biological eyes or partnering with an AI companion that has meticulously memorized and mathematically mapped over 11,000 global cases?
I certainly know what I would want for my own family.
Exactly. So what does this all mean as we zoom out and look at the future? We are looking at a true democratization of elite medicine. We are taking a process that is locked behind multi-million-dollar lab equipment in major global capitals, and we are turning it into accessible software.
Software that is remarkably lightweight, I should add.
Really? I would assume this needs a supercomputer.
No, the researchers noted that Hetairos can run on consumer-grade hardware. It literally requires a single RTX 2080 Ti GPU.
Wait, like a gaming graphics card?
The exact kind of graphics card you'd find in a high-end teenage gaming PC. It can run on that hardware locally, anywhere in the world.
It is absolutely mind-blowing. We are talking about fundamentally altering the speed, the cost, and the equity of global cancer care using a graphics card and a mathematically brilliant algorithm.
It really is. And it leaves me with one final lingering thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today.
Let's hear it.
If a vision transformer algorithm can look at the physical macroarchitecture of a cell on a simple glass slide and accurately infer the invisible chemical methylation tags hidden deep within its DNA, what other fundamental biological secrets are hiding right in front of us every single day, just waiting for the right algorithm to finally see them?
That is a deeply fascinating thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Hetairos. Keep questioning the boundaries of technology, human health, and what it truly means to see. We'll catch you on the next one.